kind of going the roll, going through the roll call here. Just realize that just what a blessing it's been, despite the really difficult time. I think I've been to most, if not all of your churches as a result of the pandemic. And again, that's a whole other series of conversations, and how I guess hope to redeem some good out of this really difficult time. And I also know that y'all have been praying for our team and praying for our community and your congregations as well. And I can tell you that I continue to covet those prayers and need those more than ever. So thank you for that. And as Father Alex had mentioned there as well, is that I'm a fellow believer. I go to Creekside, and Steve's been my pastor longer than either one of us care to admit. And so it's been a good long time. And again, I appreciate the introduction to this group over a year and a half ago now, almost. So again, I appreciate that. So I am very much an optimist. I'm an optimist at heart. I am definitely a glass half full kind of guy, and always am looking towards the positive side of things. And but I'm also what I call a grounded optimist. It's bound by reality. And I think that if you don't treat the world the way that it is and treat it the way you want it to be, you're going to be sadly disappointed and not very effective. So I'm going to start with probably some very disappointing kind of numbers and statistics, some things that you've heard, but I'll put some flesh to the bones. Many of you have been praying with, your church members, and knowing very personally just what the toll has been. But I'm going to put some of this in context, kind of talk a little bit about where we've been and kind of how we get out of this mess, and kind of where we are right now, and then kind of move forward. And also some challenges that I'm facing in terms of trying to get us through this. So again, as we, when we first met, kind of the idea is that we had to do a lot of what we call non-pharmacologic or non-vaccine controls to help slow things down. And we did those with varying degrees of success, lots of challenges with kind of getting us there. But those were things like the initial lockdown, then moving on to just wearing masks, to increasing the amount of testing that we were doing. And then finally, we started getting the vaccines available. When the vaccines started to get to the general community, obviously we hit the high-risk people first, and then when it got to the general community eligible on April 5th, that was in my eyes was the beginning of the end. That was our path to freedom, our path back to normal, and really the blessing that the vaccines came out the way that they did and as effective as they were, and could get us to where we needed to be. But the reality is that we, kind of had this amazing sort of recovery, right? So we did what we needed to do. Science came through. We kind of were able to kind of get, the treatment that we needed in terms of the vaccine and the prevention. And then we got sucked into a lot of different things. The polarization that exists in our society right now, the fact that everything gets seen through a political lens, the fact that we don't make medical decisions for medical reasons, we make them for other reasons that have nothing to do with medicine or public health or for caring or loving one another. And so we did, as I like to say, as we're coming up on the football season here, is that we, the opposing team is driving, we intercept the ball, they're about to score. We go back to the far end zone to score the winning touchdown, and we spike the ball on the 10-yard line. And now we're stuck. We haven't won the game. We've prolonged the game. We've put it into overtime. And in that overtime period where we didn't get enough people vaccinated, thousands more are going to die, plain and simple. The longer this virus sticks around, the longer it has to mutate. When it mutates, more people die. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The Delta variant is really just the same COVID virus. Some people think it's a different virus. It's the same virus, but it's gotten meaner and badder and faster. What it's done is it not so much that it's changed in a way that it's kind of doing things the other virus didn't do, the earlier strains of the virus didn't do, but it went from being kind of like, a Labrador retriever to it becoming more of a pit bull, right? So in other words, what the virus does now is that it reproduces itself much faster than the strains before. So in other words, it doesn't do anything different, but what it does is it overwhelms people's immune systems a lot faster, and it spreads easier. To give you an idea, when we would sort of culture virus from people's throats or their nose previously, you'd get a certain amount of virus. Let's say you get 500 virus particles. If you do it now, you get 500,000 virus particles. as much to 1,000 times faster ability of the virus to spread. That's why it's spreading so much easier. And that's why we're getting the breakthrough cases. I mean, just on this phone call, there, two of you had mentioned that you'd had vaccination and it became breakthrough cases. The reason why that happened is that vaccines work, but I can get you in a situation where you are indoors and exposed to enough people and enough virus to where no matter how well your immune system functions, no matter how well the vaccine functions, we can overwhelm that system. And so, in other words, when you have three things happened at the same time in June and into July. You had unmasking because we thought we were done, which I thought was appropriate. We had rates that really dropped. That was the time to do it, as long as the vaccinations continued. But the vaccinations didn't continue. We stopped from hitting a peak of 5,000 people per day that we were vaccinating on campus there at the beginning of April. We dropped to where, at the end there, towards before I left for a month off, we were vaccinating fewer than 20 or 30 people a day. And so you had this dramatic drop off, so less immunity coming into the community. And then you get the Delta virus. It had enough time. It changed. It kind of evolved. Now you've got the Delta strain that kind of really took off and had, by chance, this ability to spread so much faster. So those three things got us to the place that we are now. To give you some numbers, to give you some perspective, before we would say that, Alachua County per 100,000 residents, we were very nervous if we got up to 100 to 100,000 per day. We blew past that. We are now at 600 per 100,000 people per day. In other words, Alachua County is having about 1,200 cases just blowing through us at any one time. So the numbers are overwhelming. It's overwhelming public health's ability to respond to it. It's overwhelming our ability on campus to respond to it right now. We're trying to scale up to get back to where we were before. Again, most people have relatively mild illness, especially those who are the breakthrough cases. People who get the breakthrough cases, had they not been vaccinated, they would very likely be in the hospital regardless of their age. That's another new thing with this virus, is that it's younger. Right now, 25% of the people in the hospital right now, 25% of the people in the hospital right now are in their 30s or younger. We have 14 teenagers in the hospital, 7 of them on breathing machines. That is unheard of. And when people tell you that this is the flu, it is not. That is a lie straight from the pit of hell, as far as I'm concerned, because it was designed to sort of mislead people and make them think that this is us making a big deal out of nothing. We normally have 1 ICU team in the hospital here at UF Health. We have 5 working around the clock. We have 264 people in the hospital. That's 100 more than we had in our peak in January of this year, when we thought we were at the worst where we were. We've got, again, younger people in the hospital, people that tend to be sicker because the amount of virus that they breathed in was so much, because they unmasked, took off their controls, and then the Delta virus all came in, and all these things hit at once. Now, again, that's some sobering news, and I can go on and on about it. I won't do that. I think you've got the picture. But the reality is that we still have a way out. The vaccines still work. They work really, really well. But this is hard, and this is something that I to be quite honest with you, I've struggled with, and I covet your prayers. When asked for your prayers in this, because I think the thing that's really challenged my faith the most during all of this, it has nothing to do with the virus. It has nothing to deal with illness. That's my job. That's what we do. But what's been so difficult for me from a very personal standpoint is that Christians have probably the lowest vaccination rate of any subgroup in the United States. I can't explain that other than the fact that our politics. And again, it's politics depending on what flavor of Christian, right? So it's just depending on what your politics are, that has driven it. That is the single predictor of whether or not somebody gets vaccinated or not. And again, I'm being straight up. I mean, I know we like to try to avoid politics, but this is reality. When you look at it as a group, evangelical believers are vaccinated at a rate about 20 to 25% across the country, maybe 30% now. And that's half as much as everybody else. And when you look at where it's going the fastest, it's where there are the most evangelical believers. Again, it has to do directly with vaccination. It has directly to do with a lot of the misconceptions that people pick up that have nothing to do with our faith. In fact, in my personal opinion, have everything to do against our faith. It's to love your brother, to love one another, to care for those around you, the demands that we have as part of our faith. we don't have that. And you hear some of the frustration in my voice, and I apologize, but I feel like I can talk to you as brothers, and so far only, actually I have two sisters. I saw brothers and sisters here. And so I just, just help me see how to communicate this to my fellow believers. Because if, Christians get vaccinated at the rate of everybody else, we bump up significantly. We get to closer to where we are. But each minute we give this virus a chance to fight back, it will mutate again, and it will be more difficult, more than likely, the next time around. And so this is a wave. The wave will come down pretty quickly. We're going to be in a bad place for about another week, 2 weeks, and then you're going to hear of rates starting to drop. The hospitals may take a little bit longer, maybe 2-3 weeks before they start to lighten up. And then there will be deaths, but not as bad as it was previously with the nursing homes, which was like just brush fires, just kind of going through very quickly through dry, through the dry backbrush. But right now, what we've just got to see is that we're going to get through this. It'll probably be back to where it was in June and probably late October, but the numbers of cases are just phenomenal. And so again, I think that we can get out of this, but there's a lot that we have to do. But with UF coming back next week, right now, our schools have 1,200 students in isolation and quarantine and counting. That's going to go up. Probably, I expect, I wouldn't be surprised if it went up 10% per day for the next week or two. And so that number will be very high. The numbers at UF will also be very high. Again, ironically, politically, a lot of this is coming from rules and regulations and now basically laws that prohibit us from doing things to address the virus that we need to. So I can't ask about vaccine status. I can't do a bunch of different things that I thought I would be able to do, but I cannot. And so again, it's challenging. There's a lot of these conflicts that I try to get through. I want to try to, give you this very optimistic kind of perspective, which is by nature what I want to do. And to me, my optimistic nature is saying we have a path, and that's vaccinate. We have a path, and we reach to something greater than ourselves. And I don't have to depend on just man. I don't have to depend on my wisdom or my wisdom of my colleagues or your wisdom to do it. It's just, we have, the Lord will carry us through this. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that this is very challenging and very difficult at the moment with kind of where we are. And many of us are at our wits' end. I pray for continued ability to be positive and not get angry about people not doing things to help their brothers and sisters and to help just their community. Again, I kind of remember things that just the last book I'd read from Tim Keller was just the importance of, loving our community, loving the people that we live with, believers or not. And I just don't, I struggle that because I think we've put our politics, whatever side of the coin that might be on, that's our idol. We put that before our faithful duties. And so again, I apologize for sort of sharing that in that way. I want to give just facts, and I will gladly answer questions, but I would be less than honest with you if I didn't share with you kind of what the backstory is, and that there's not like, we're not at a loss to know what to do. We know what we need to do. It's just getting people to do it. And I cannot tell you how difficult it is for me as someone who's spent his entire career preparing for a moment just like this, and have somebody tell me that, well, I saw on the news that it's, that this is all fake. I saw on the news that it makes you magnetic. I saw on the news that, this is just like the flu, and this is just doctors trying to build more money for a new thing. And, doctors are really just doing this to make more money. And, it's just, it's not easy. And again, looking at my colleagues, I think I'm working hard. I went to the ICU today to see my former secretary, who is a believer, who is a very diehard in her political views, and she is sucking on a straw right now, trying to stay alive. And so how many times do we have to see that, and how do we communicate that better? And to people who should know better, to people who should jump on this and say, it is my chance to care for those around me. And if there are legitimate questions, which there certainly are, get them answered by people who can answer them. And so again, sorry for my soapbox and for kind of taking my own little made up pulpit here, but I was looking forward to this day to be able to talk to you, to just know not only how I can serve you, but to be honest with you, to just for your prayers to kind of help us, because it is not I don't have an easy way out of this one, other than the fact that I could just keep saying, the blessings, this sort of common grace that we have by having medicines and vaccines and everything that we have at our disposal, but just knowing the way through. So again, I will stop there and take any questions, and would be, like I said, just very much covet your prayers and support in any way.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. And I do want to turn it over to let people ask questions. I am recording this meeting, and I can make that recording available to all of you with Dr. Mike, with your permission. Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of people that we need to make sure get to hear from you. I do want to just, as people are thinking about the questions they want to ask, and ask that you just raise your hand or let me know somehow in the chat. One thing that came up, did you say that only 25% of Christians are evangelical Christians?
The last numbers that I saw that showed that those were the lowest numbers overall. Now that may have changed in about a month or so since I've seen that, but that number was lagging by about half of what the general population was, which is about 25-30% overall amongst evangelical believers.
Great. That was a question that was being asked in the chat box while you were wrapping up. So.
Hey, Mike.
Pastors, what questions do you have for Dr.
Hey, Mike.
Lauzardo?
Yeah. Hey,
Mike, so how feasible would it be? I know we did this once earlier in the summer, but how feasible would it be for us to do vaccinations at churches on Sundays? Is there enough resources in the community for us as pastors?
There is, and we've been doing that. And actually, we've done it at a few places, and we never got more than 5 at any single church that we went to like that. It was very low. Now, there have been some other community-based events that we did. So Pastor Shirley, good to see you again there. It's been a little while, but, we had different events at churches that did garner much more. So we did Upper Room, we've done Shirley's Church. And I want to say that we did Queen of Peace as well, with some other kind of events that were bigger, but focused on the community. But as far as like, hey, after service today or after Mass or whatever, come and get vaccinated, those have been very, very low. The events at churches have done really well, but those are community-based, kind of larger things, not necessarily targeted at that congregation. The number one thing that links best to somebody, a church really having much higher rates, is when one of their church members dies. So when there is a death in the church, we get a lot of people vaccinated. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's what drives, when we've seen like, hey, you've got a lot of people at your church have been vaccinated. What happens? Oh, we did 2 funerals a month ago. That's what really, really drives the point home.
Yeah, got people's attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions that you have?
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, that speaks. Mike, again, thank you for doing this. Again, I don't know how many times you've done it, but you've done it so many times, and we're really grateful.
I'm doing 5 town halls today.
Holy cow!
Alone.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad to keep doing them, but I've done well over 100.
Wow.
So, well, actually, it's about close to 200 now. But yeah, I won't stop talking.
Yeah. No, I'm just really grateful. So I guess to your point about, you have the biggest drives when people die or pass away, which I was assuming was the case, and I hate to hear it. How much of our time pastorally, how much of our resources should we be spending right now on trying to kind of convince people to get vaccinated, et cetera, if it seems like the thing that changes the game is, death, anecdotal kind of things? Because obviously we have limited amount of time. Most pastors are generalists, so they're doing, however many things to try to care for people spiritually, physically, and emotionally. So it's not, to me, it's not a matter of, should we be doing it, but it's just how much time should we be stewarding. Russell Moore, for example, was talking recently. I saw him about how, in his experience, basically nothing that he's saying anymore matters unless someone has had, a really emotional experience personally or with a family member. So I'm just trying to figure out kind of the algorithm, I guess, right now. I wondered if you had insight into that.
I don't, because I think that, to be honest with you, let me just be, and this is going to sound crazy coming from me, a doctor and a public health person, especially after my little sort of monologue there, is that COVID's going to eventually go away, right? And we're going to eventually get the upper hand in this, whether vaccines get mandated in some fantasy world in which I live in, and you just finally get past the hump and finally get this done, let people complain and do whatever. Then we get enough people vaccinated and we finally get out of this. Or that somehow there's a miracle and all types of people get vaccinated, because it's not just Christians that aren't getting vaccinated. So I don't want to say that. There are a lot of other people that are not. Younger people, it is a nightmare trying to get some of them to get vaccinated. And so a lot of myths out there. But what worries me more than anything, what I think is the ailment that I think would be something to focus more on, is in terms of, this to me speaks to a larger problem in the fact that just how we've idolized our political views, which to me is a more serious ailment that's not going to lead to the death of church members, but in my opinion will lead to the death of the American church. I think it's just, when you look at the depth of how we are committed to certain sort of viewpoints and the loyalty that we show to those with no basis in scripture whatsoever, and how it divides us, it's incredible. And again, this is not the time for this, and I don't want to trivialize the larger context and the importance of some of the other and the complexity of some of these issues. But just to kind of let you know how socialized we are in certain ways, it's like it took a pandemic for me to go, worship on the east side of town. Like, why? Because I'm, encultured, I'm sort of socialized in a certain way, and I never think about it. And again, that's not the answer to everything. But my point is that we're so not thinking about the unity in Christ that we need to be. And yet, this is just one more symptom, a fatal symptom, a very obvious, painful symptom. But it's just, we should be driven by the fact that, like, hey guys, we're Christians. This is our time to step up. It's like, we go, this is what we need to do. And again, I've thought a lot about this, and I'm saying this very humbly in front of, a body, not just of believers, but of pastors and all of you to whom I defer to. But it's just, to me, that's been my struggle, is just trying to see, how do I break through personally that idol of politics, that idol of our culture, and kind of how we've put those things above the things that really matter, as opposed to unity in Christ, serving our brothers and sisters, to following scripture, to following that guidance. And that's what I fear more than anything. I fear that far more than I do the virus. And so again, if that's addressed, then these other things become easier, and it may be too late. I don't know. And I certainly don't say, hey, we all got to do a sermon this week on the virus, and kind of getting vaccinated. I don't know what that'll eventually accomplish. I'm open to it, obviously, and I don't want to tell you how to manage your time, but that's, to me, that the idols that we've put up that are part of our culture, politics or culture or society, is far more a bigger threat than the other things that we're dealing with. And I'm sorry if I misspoke there. And then Steve, you can counsel me afterwards if I'm way off the reservation here on this one, but that's kind of where I am.
Oh, yeah. And that's really helpful, because I've been wondering, should I be trying to spend even more of my time on the kind of the underlying causes than just the directives, trying to figure out, just go deeper. The challenge, I guess, in my mind is just that is a long game. I mean, I'm meeting with a family today who got really upset about some masking things. And that's mainly going to be me sitting there and listening and saying, hey, what's really going on beneath this?
Right.
That takes 2 hours of an afternoon, and that's just with two people. I'm not disparaging that use of time, but that's just not something that happens fast, and I can only do so much of that, I guess.
No, I hear you. And that's, I think, the heart of it, because I mean, just go back to when, I'm looking kind of age-wise here, look back when we were all kids, and if doctors and the authorities said, you got to do this, we believed them and trusted them. And we don't believe in trust now, because we have these idols that we've placed above everything else. Not to idolize a time in the past, because obviously there were tons of problems years back as well, but it is a unique time, and I think an opportunity for us to step up, and not all of us have. It's painful. It's very painful.
I think it's become difficult because all of our folks are more influenced by the media they consume through the week,
right,
than they are by the 30 or 45-minute sermon they hear from us on Sunday. And if a person has listened to, and it's gotten more radicalized. Like, I know my parents won't get the vaccine, and for years they were avid Fox News watchers. They watch Fox News all day, every day. they've stopped watching Fox News because Fox is too liberal for them.
Right.
And now they're watching one of these other, I don't even know what they're called, one of these other news networks. And it's, so they're hearing this anti-mask, anti-vax message on a perpetual loop, and it's discipling them. And it's incredibly difficult to know how to counteract that without sounding like you're being argumentative or playing into the hands. It's incredibly difficult. And so what should be a pretty straightforward, like, let's keep everyone safe and do the things we need to do, has become fraught at every turn with these political landmines that we didn't lay, but that we're constantly stepping on with different people. So I struggle too. I don't know how to speak into that well.
It's tough. And your parents, I'm sure, had their doctor or authority say, hey, there's this thing going on, just wear this piece of cloth over your face for the next few weeks when you go out in public indoors, and we'll be okay along with these other things. They would have done it. Right. It's just, again, we've idolized and raised these things. And to me, it's a bigger, larger problem that I don't have any easy answers for.
My mom's sister got polio before the vaccine was out, and she's still alive, but she had serious, physical ramifications from polio that she still lives with. And it's like, Mom, you were there for polio. You know what this is like. Come on now. But it's impossible you can't reason your way through this for some reason.
I'm probably older than a lot of people on here, but I remember after church standing in line with my parents, getting my sugar cube and getting that vaccine. And I don't remember, I know I was younger, but I don't remember any discussion, should we or shouldn't we?
Right.
We just did it. So that's your point, Doctor. I don't get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me move us ahead. I appreciate this conversation, and I don't think we're going to solve this problem today. I have some other thoughts as well. But from a practical standpoint, Dr. Mike, one of the questions in the chat box is, should we be doing more in terms of the things we were talking about earlier on, like purchasing air purifiers, scrubbers, ultraviolet tools, those sorts of things? Any advice from you from a practical standpoint?
No, I think those engineering things are very expensive and a very limited and dubious value. And so I wouldn't go that route.
Okay.
I would think that just look at who's at risk in your congregations, and just say, if you're unvaccinated and at high risk, strongly advise that you not meet in person. If you're vaccinated, right now, indoors we're recommending, and the county passed an ordinance last night to indoor masking once again. So vaccinated or unvaccinated. One thing that might help with some of the vaccination, hey, I'm vaccinated, I don't need to wear a mask indoors kind of argument, is what I use as my umbrella analogy. So when it's raining lightly or even moderately, you got an umbrella, you're going to stay dry. But if it's an afternoon Florida big time thunderstorm or a tropical storm, you got an umbrella, you're going to get soaking wet. So when there's that much virus, like it is now, we're in the middle of a tropical storm, you wear a raincoat and an umbrella and galoshes, right? So you do all those to kind of stay dry. And then when it starts raining lightly, you can get rid of the raincoat, you can get rid of the galoshes and just walk around with your umbrella. And you do that long enough, it's eventually going to stop raining, right? So to me, it's just like we're in a phase. That's why we just mask up. If you're not vaccinated, you're taking a very serious risk by being out and doing things without a mask. And you are threatening other people because your illness doesn't stop with you, right? Your right to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose. And so I think at this point, people not getting vaccinated and carrying on like nothing's happening are swinging their fists and really putting other people at risk as well.
Dr. Mike, let me I know don't want to take too much of your time, but I appreciate it. Let me ask a question about children, because one of the things we've talked about is, obviously anyone under 12 can't be vaccinated at this point. Should we as pastors be more concerned about our children being at church inside, obviously masked, but just any advice you give us with regard to that unvaccinated population under 12?
It's a really good question. I think the main thing to remember is that most transmission is still occurring in the home. And so going for like 1 hour to church service masked and taking other precautions, not going if you're sick, or even if you think you're sick, not going and staying home, then that's, I think, enough to protect kids and families from going. And then kind of have your quarantine group kind of stay and follow the rules, wear the mask when you come indoors. You're outdoors, take it off. Again, transmission outdoors is theoretically possible, and it does happen, but it's so uncommon and so unlikely that it's just not worth kind of the extra stress of kind of saying always wear a mask, especially in 100-degree heat. So I think with kids, we'll probably get some light in terms of vaccination here, but it's still probably going to be a few months away, maybe 2 or 3 months away before we can start vaccinating young kids. But right now, I would say masked in church is okay. If they have any immune problems or anything like that, then I would say keep your kids home like I would anybody else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions that.
Hey, Dr. Mike, can you speak to this new variant that's supposedly coming out in South America, this Lambda variant? Do you know much about that, or should we be concerned about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for those you may not have heard, there's another variant, Lambda, that's supposed to be more severe illness. Maybe doesn't spread as fast, but it's a more severe illness. There are going to be a bunch of variants kind of normally evolve. So since the very beginning, since the first virus that came out of that bat started to evolve and kind of mix in that first person, there have been different variants. Lambda's maybe the next one. Hopefully not. Again, it may be more virulent. If this one isn't the problem, there might be one in the future. So we've just got to see what mutations occur and what it looks like. But again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. If we get vaccinated, the vaccines work really well against all the strains. It's just you got to get enough people vaccinated so you can create enough dead ends so it doesn't spread.
Dr. Mike, wanted to ask a question about booster shots for people over 65. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So I'm sure all of you have heard that boosters are being recommended now by the CDC. They started out with people with immune deficiency. So think about transplant patients, people who are on medicines called biologics for like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, people on chronic prednisone therapy for a variety of different things. So those recommendations came out, and those folks are being recommended to get vaccinated, get vaccinated now. In people over the age of 65, the guidelines are saying 8 months after your vaccination, you should get a booster, get that third dose of either Pfizer or Moderna. The reason why those two groups, immunosuppressed and people over the age of 65, is because there's nothing new here. It's just that with all vaccines, those two groups don't respond as well because your immune system gets a little bit weaker and not as what we call robust when you're over the age of 65. And when you're immunosuppressed, it doesn't work as well. It's not that the vaccine doesn't work. It means, remember, it's an immune therapy, so your immune system has to work. It doesn't mean the vaccine doesn't work. It means it doesn't work as well. So getting that booster is going to help. And actually with the studies that have been done so far, it's a nice little jolt to kind of move things forward. The one thing I'm not as sure about, and I want to look at the data, the CDC went and took the next step and said at the end of next month, they're going to recommend that everybody get a booster shot. I don't know what the evidence of that is because the 2 shots works really well in young and healthy people. I'm not sure if they were looking at some responses to people after exposure in the lab, say to the Lambda strain, or there's some other strains that we want to get immunity even higher. We know that it's tolerated really well. Most people get a really sore arm, so they say, it's not tolerated well, it's really bad. Yeah, but the really severe complications with the vaccines are far less common with this vaccine than with others, although the local ones are far more common. Almost everybody gets a really sore arm after getting this, and some people have like a local skin reaction. So it's a sign of a really strong immune response. So I think that boosters are coming. They're also going to recommend them for medical personnel because we get exposed so much and our risk is substantially higher. And we're supposed to stay healthy so that we can keep going and get everybody else taken care of. So those will be coming. I would encourage those of you who might be over the age of 65, you can just go and get that now. I thought I saw a question, I don't know if it was this or one of the previous calls I was on, saying, do you have to wait till 8 months? You don't. Anything I think after 6 months for someone over the age of 65 is reasonable. And we're not going to bend over backwards to check, right? It's going to be, hey, look, if you're over 65, it's been 6 months since your last shot, we'll give you your third shot, and no other questions asked at that point. Now, those policies are rolling out. Our clinics are going to just say, just do it, because we want to just move fast and get through people quickly and not give people hassle. We want zero disincentive to get it. We just want to make it as easy as, getting a drink of water from a water fountain. Just make it real easy. Go from there.
Kevin Anderson, you had a question. Great question, Bob.
Yeah. Any advice on talking to those who may have already had the virus and then recovered from it? Those seem to be the people that I'm having the most cognitive dissonance with.
Exactly.
They're really hesitant to want to get the vaccine because the natural immunity. And I will say, from a public relations standpoint, the talk about natural immunity hasn't been real strong. Yeah. Maybe it's some of the medical stuff. So how can we bridge that gap of saying, hey, yes, natural immunity exists, but also here is the evidence for why a vaccine would also be helpful for you moving forward?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say also be helpful. I would say it's critical, because here's the scoop. Natural immunity is real and it's good. So again, infection within 90 days after natural infection is really, really rare. But after 90 days, it's not so rare. And in fact, after 6-9 months, it actually becomes pretty common. And what we're seeing are a lot of people kind of, frequent flyers coming back with COVID the second time around, especially if they had a non-hospitalizing, not a severe case. So if they just had a cold, mild symptoms, if they're not vaccinated, they're going to get it again. Yes, we have breakthrough cases with the vaccine, but those are people after intense exposures. And the strongest immunity of all are people who've had COVID and then get vaccinated, or any combination of the two. So that immunity is even stronger. So people who've had COVID before need to get vaccinated to break the chain of transmission, because they're going to get it again, especially with rapidly spreading strains like Delta and probably what's coming down the road. But yeah, a place for resources too is that the White House has the COVID Community Corps, COVID-19 Community Corps. If you look them up, and they'll have a lot of resources, toolkits, how to speak with blank population as a layperson. So some of it's there for medical personnel, but most of it's there for the general community.
Dr. Mike had a chat question about should the booster be the same if you had Moderna? Should you get Moderna as the booster?
CDC is recommending that, but from a biological standpoint, there's probably no real strong reason for that. I got Moderna. I'm probably going to get Moderna again because it's so readily available at different places. But there's no, if you get stuck and say, all right, look, I'm traveling, I really want to get this dose because I'm not going to be able to do it for a few weeks, and I got Pfizer and Moderna is only available, then just get the Moderna. So there's not going to be harm to do it that way. The question mark right now is what they're going to say with Johnson & Johnson for the very small percentage of people that got Johnson & Johnson instead of Pfizer or Moderna. Those folks, it's probably going to be use Pfizer or Moderna and not do a second J&J, but I think that's the debate. And that guidance I expect is probably going to come out in the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Real quick comment. You'd asked a question. We want to be helpful to you. I would suggest that it's not that that some of the unvaccinated people think that the doctors are making lots of money, but they do think that pharmaceutical companies are making lots of money off of these, not only the vaccine, but now the boosters. So anything you can share or anything we can help to dispense some rumors about that would be helpful. And
they'll make a lot less money with people getting vaccinated than with them in the hospital.
That's a good argument. Yeah. And then there's also a fair number, and we live in a medical community, but there's a fair number of medical personnel, particularly nurses, that are anti-vaccination.
So where that came from is that the Russians had a very sophisticated, and I sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist by saying this, I recognize that, but they had a very significant disinformation campaign saying that vaccines caused infertility in women. And so when you look at what is the number one group of people who are nurses in hospitals and in healthcare settings, it's going to be women of childbearing age. And so they are the single largest group of medical people. When you look at physicians, it's like 95+% are vaccinated. It's probably 99% at our institution. When you look at the nurses that are childbearing age, it's about 50. And so and again, it's like there was this tons of information, very believable stuff, documentaries, all this stuff that was just something I can only describe with language that probably would not be a good idea to describe with a bunch of pastors on the call here. So it was just pure garbage.
quite upsetting,
And
Dr. Mike.
We've been getting a lot of that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Melissa, were you going to ask a question?
Yes, I did have a question. I just want to thank Dr. Mike for being here. And I've been a nurse in this community for years and years before going into full-time ministry. So I'm very acquainted firsthand with what's going on. And our elder, Pete Sorrentos over at North Florida, even did a video for our congregation urging them. And I hear the statistics he's coming from, your statistics from Shands. And I talk to people and they're saying, well, I look at the Alachua County database, it's showing and recording no deaths in our area. And this is conflicting information, and it becomes he said, she said kind of stuff. Where can we go where would you recommend we go for our area to really find and get the information we need to be informed so that we can share this with people?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is to go to the sources that they trust. I mean, I think that they can, to be honest with you, I think we're at a point where we're like one-on-one conversations to be able to kind of work through things. I will say this though, and this might be a little cynicism creeping in, hopefully not. And I'm trying to be that positive optimist here, but the reality is that, you know, if you're looking at a bunch of statistics to try to make up your mind, I found that most of those people are trying to find a reason not to get vaccinated. So they're going to keep fishing until they find something. Aha, there it is. Nobody's died, so I don't need to do this. They're going to go here. It's like, if they really believed their doctors or believed us, they would just do it. They're just looking for a reason to sort of make their guilt better by saying, oh, look, I found a report where the hospital is really full with people that are dying from the vaccine. And so I'm not going to do that. I've heard that one before. And so I think that's the real challenge. So there's a lot of really good information. So I would say the CDC is number one. The Florida Department of Health would be number two. Some of the county's very specific numbers, those change because they're coming from so many different sources. They're hard to keep up. And remember, the staff is not there. There's not enough staff to be able to keep these numbers up to date. That's right. And so people take that as evidence as some sort of conspiracy. It's like, no, they're just nobody to do it. They're busy, you know? So I think that's something people are looking. I have found that people are looking and saying, aha, that's it. I know that. And that's coming from people that are telling me, literally a non-medical person telling me and say, hey, the hospitals are filled with, you know, people that are flu, you've diagnosed them wrong. And I'm like, you're an accountant and you're telling me how to die. You know, really? I mean, you're really going there. And it's just it, but it's just, to me, it's just that this unbelievable time of irrational behavior that's, again, idolizing things that have nothing to do with our faith, or even just rational behavior as a citizen. It's just, I'm baffled.
And you're right about the younger people too, being vaccine adverse. My daughter's 25 and she isn't vaccinated. And my husband and I had a conversation with her. It's very difficult, you know, when you have these adult children making these decisions. But yes, and I think prayer, definitely praying for you not to grow weary in well doing.
Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Pastor Feathers, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, good question. I know that the vaccine is the mark of the beast, is what we're hearing, and all this kind of stuff, you know. But, you know, my problem with that is, if that's the mark of the beast, we got a whole lot of beasts because we've had vaccinations all our life.
Exactly.
But I want to ask a question. Does taking the flu vaccination, will that help, or is that necessary along with taking your vaccine shots?
No, it's a great question. I had that a few times this week. And again, let me just say that many people are not getting vaccinated because they have very legitimate questions, right? So I think Kevin brought up one that's really comes like, I've had natural infection. I really don't need to get it. And they don't really understand that they do need to get it. So I don't want to cast everybody in this really negative light. But in terms of that flu question, that comes up a lot. So you need the flu for the flu shot and you need the COVID shot for COVID. It helps in the sense that if you get flu, it's going to be really bad at the same time as COVID. But again, we had the benefit of last year not having any flu cases. We had no flu cases. Why? Because masks work. They work really well against the flu. So I think this is going to change once COVID goes away. It's like, what are individuals going to do? There won't be mask mandates for the flu, but people will have mask up on their own because it is very effective. I took some conspiracy theorist who I saw at a wedding not too long ago who said to me, he asked me that same question. So there was no flu, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, see, you're really having flu cases. You're calling COVID because you wanted to create something new. And I'm like, really? So it's just very challenging.
Pastor Boswell.
Yeah, thank you for all the information today, Dr. Mike. The one thing that we've come across is for the people that did not want to take the shot, but contracted COVID, has become the best advocates for getting the shot, especially if they wind up in the hospital with a severe case. They're coming out and blowing the trumpet, trying to convince other family members. So if I would suggest anything is, maybe in our churches have testimonials to the congregation about not getting a shot and then going through what they went through, and now would advocate or champion getting a shot to keep other people from facing what they did.
Yeah, no, I think that makes the most sense to me to do that. And I think we got something that we need to try. So I leave that to y'all's discretion. I know the pushback I've gotten on some of that before, and I certainly don't want to discourage it, but I've had pushback where people said, you're just trying to scare people, because everyone in our family's already had it and it was no big deal. And now you're trying to scare me to do something I don't want to do. So, but I think you bring a good point, because I think you will get people that will do it because you put a face to it. It's not just a number, it's a face and someone who could share with you where they're at and they can identify with.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. This is just helping us know how to be praying for you. Oh, there was one chat question with regard to, where does this misinformation come about if you get the vaccine, that somehow your immune system is going to begin to attack itself, or that, obviously you've said there's some legitimate health reasons not to get the vaccine, but has there also been sort of this, internet campaign to?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like we have one truth and we got to stick to it, right? There are 1,000 different lies and stories you can make up, and so I think that's the hard part, right? So it's like, they can make up and say it does this, it does that, it does this, it makes you magnetic, it causes you not to have babies, it messes with your DNA, and again, but if people have real questions about that, we just need to go one by one and address those and not mock them, not be angry with them, help people make that decision, but also be very clear about, it's like, no, this is the concern and this is kind of what we're facing right now. And if we don't get vaccinated, it's okay. You'll get another chance to do it because this pandemic is going to last a long time. And it doesn't have to. We could have been done. And, the thing I want to emphasize too is that had we gotten 80% of the US vaccinated by the beginning of June, we would be done.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. This is sobering, but it's helpful information. And again, just to remind you guys, I have this recorded, so we can share that recording with you afterwards, and you can dispel the information as you see fit. Maybe
Mike, I have a question.
Go ahead, Carl Anderson.
Yeah, how are we going to handle? And I think I mentioned this to you before. A big concern of mine is, and I know a lot of this has to do with politics and the governor, but a big concern of mine is us packing the stadium out in a few weeks, man. I mean, the doctors and nurses are already overwhelmed. North Florida's talking about bringing tents to house people outside. And it's only going to get worse. No one's going to be masked out yelling orange and blue, go Gators, touchdown, yay, high-fiving. They're not trying to minimize or limit the stadium use again.
We're not allowed, and we're not allowed.
Wow.
So it's kind of
by who?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things coming.
Is that an SEC?
No. SEC says local jurisdiction, local rules apply, and it's kind of the governor says you can't restrict anything back. Now, I think to me, the biggest risk is, ironically, the stadium's going to be bad enough, but I think the biggest risk are the restaurants, the bars, and even the tailgating to some extent, but probably more the indoor stuff that is associated with every game, and that's going to be the real driver. And I think what will happen is we'll run out of people pretty soon, right? So in other words, if you're not vaccinated, you're going to get it, and then we'll get a pause for a few months, and then we'll get right back when everybody gets reinfected again with the next strain. Just we got to vaccinate.
Yeah, and talking about the next strand, are there? Is it true there's other strands out there? Like I heard of a alpha. I've heard of a lambda.
Yeah, lambda.
Is that
yeah.
true?
Yeah, and Pastor Jones brought up about lambda when he was asking that question. But lambda is a real thing. We got to see if that ends up taking hold in the population. It's again right now 90+% are delta, and then there'll be a new strand that'll kind of take its place. So we'll see. But again, we break the cycle if we get vaccinated.
Well, yeah. We got to pray for the governor, man. This is something else. It grieves my spirit to know that this stuff has been politicized, and you all are doing all you can do as health professionals. We as pastors, we got to be praying, but we also, and I heard Chipper ask this question earlier about how much time we should allocate towards this. It's about saving lives. It's like, it doesn't compare to salvation, but physically we are trying to save lives. And so I've been still preaching Jesus and evangelizing one-on-one, but I've been also talking to people one-on-one, about this. On last week, I'm happy to say that 15 people, went and got vaccinated. Right now, that's the best course of action, because so much misinformation out there. People are shooting like these YouTube links in people's inboxes. They believe in that stuff. It looks believable. It's professionally done, but it's not. And if anybody want to know if people are dying around here, just ask Pastor Thorpe and I. Since we've been reopened, there's been a funeral at our church. Now, not all of them been COVID, but most of them have every weekend, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. One weekend, Thorpe had 3 on a Saturday. But it's bad. And so we really got to do what we got to do to really get this message across about vaccination and wearing masks. I'm afraid what's going to happen after these games. We really got to be praying for that as well. And also, right the governor. He needs to hear more than from the black preachers. I'm just going to be real with you. And from more than Democrats.
Thank you, Carl. Maybe one more question. If somebody has a pressing question, I do want to honor Dr. Mike's time. He's taken so much time for us.
I do have one more.
Okay, Kevin. And then I'm going to ask Bob Shetler. If you will just lead us in a prayer for Dr. Mike, that would be really great. Go ahead, Kevin.
Mike, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but one of the, videos I've seen circulating that people are using is from some guy who at least claimed to be one of the creators of the mRNA vaccine. And he was talking about the mRNA vaccines, the spike protein, and then being cytotoxic and all these other things. And as you were saying earlier, even that this was, confirmation bias for those who were, looking for reasons not to take the vaccine. Are you familiar with this guy? Is there just anything that we can know about, some of these guys who claim to have been behind the technology for the vaccine, on whether their voice is trustworthy or not, and maybe how to approach some of the disinformation?
I'm not familiar with that particular story. I know that people have twisted one of the creators' words of saying that we'll never reach herd immunity, but herd immunity in terms of never getting sick with COVID in the future? No, that's not the case, because there are 4 other human coronaviruses that give us the common cold, and society doesn't stop for those, right? And it doesn't kill anybody. But we can get enough immunity where you stop killing millions of people every year, and you could just get that number down way below what it is for flu. I'm not familiar with the video that's circulating there, but it's all confirmation bias, right? You're going to look for the videos. You're not going to look for the 10,000 things on the CDC and the State Department of Health and your doctor's office. You're going to look for, the whatever, Breitbart kind of puts out, and you're going to say, oh, well, look at here. And then they can use some fancy scientific terms that you have no idea what they mean, but it looks impressive to you and you're believable to you and your friends who don't want to get vaccinated anyway. And it just perpetuates thing. And it's evil. It's just pure evil. And so I don't know. So I think that the medical community does not have any real debate whether or not we should get vaccinated or not. There isn't a debate about it. I mean, there are side effects, there's things we look for and we're monitoring. And then if a vaccine's bad, we won't give it. I mean, that's where we're at, but it's just people look for reasons to just confirm their bias and confirm their political views and say, aha, I told you so.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Just one quick question. If majority, or I would venture to guess that everyone in this call is vaccinated. If we gathered in person with masks on for these types of meetings, do you feel as if we're being unduly risk taking, or would you think that we would be safe in getting together?
So vaccinated people who are wearing masks indoors, I think is fine. And again, just follow the rules. If you're sick or even think you're sick, don't go. Don't assume allergies first, assume COVID first and get tested, and then don't go if there's any question. But otherwise, vaccinated people wearing masks can get together in a room.
Thank you. Pastor Bob Shetler, will you pray for Dr. Mike? Dr. Mike, thank you again for giving us this time.
I appreciate it. No, thank you.
We are so thankful to God for
your
gifts and talent and willingness to share.
No, I know. And sorry if I was a little bit more personal in my sharing here than I was in the past. And it's just where we're at. And that's just a small tip of the iceberg compared to the rest of my colleagues.
This is a safe place where you can share those burdens. So we want you to know that. We're behind you 100%.
Thank you.
Can I just say real quick, let's be mindful of this recording though, as it goes out, please, because I do believe Dr. Mike was open and quite candid with us, and I appreciate that, but I would not want anyone to take little sound bites and take things out of context. Yeah. Not that anyone here would do it. No, that's a good
word. Luckily, our vice president is very, very savvy.
That is so wise.
With media.
That is so wise. Thank you.
Good word, Melissa. Bob.
Okay, let's pray. Father God, we thank you for the fact, number one, that you are a sovereign God and that you are in control of things. And as much as we sometimes wonder, we know that this virus did not take you by surprise. And so, Lord, we pray that you would help us as we navigate these days, that you would give us discernment and wisdom how to do it. I thank you for Dr. Mike. First of all, I thank you for his faith in Jesus Christ and his passion for being open about that faith. And so, Lord, it's difficult in his position to balance that, as we know in our world today, but we thank you for his verbalization of his love for you and his care for people. Thank you for his training, Lord, that he has brought to the table today, that this is not, excuse the terminology, it's not fake news. This is it. This is where we are. And Lord, we just thank you for that. And Lord, I pray that you would protect him and his family. I pray you would protect his team. And may his communication be clear just as it was today. And Lord, I appreciate his passion that he's like a lot of us. We're in the trenches of another virus called sin that we deal with every day in people's lives. And we get passionate about it. And it's okay to be personal and passionate because that's what God's wired us that way. So I thank you for Dr. Mike and that feeling. And so, Lord, I just ask that you would be with him. I pray for our community, our country, our world, that we would see the importance of this. And Lord, may we be careful not to miss the opportunities we have, not only to bring hope beyond the physical needs of people's lives, but use this as an entree into the spiritual needs of people. The vaccine of sin, the virus of sin that only has one healing, and that's in the person of Jesus Christ. So, Lord, help us to be good stewards of what we learned about Jesus. He grew in wisdom and knowledge and favor with God and man. And it's important for us to see the holistic need of the Church of Jesus Christ in ministry today. So be with Dr. Mike, Lord, and just thank you for his voice of light into the darkness of what we face at this time. So we thank you for him. And I thank you for Alex and Carl and the leadership of this group, that, Lord, we might be a voice of reason and hope in our community, not only against the virus, but against the spiritual needs around us. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you, Dr. Mike. We'll let you go ahead and leave. If everybody could hang on for just 1 minute, I know we're almost to 1 o'clock. I do want to just give you a couple of announcements. Thank you. We are, as we begin to think about meeting back in person, we are looking for host church for our monthly meetings. If you're willing to host, probably without a meal, at least for the next couple of months, please let me know that. Just contact me directly if you can do that. Secondly, we have got Pastors Appreciation Month coming up in October. Looking for people to be a part of a subcommittee to try to plan how we might creatively bless the pastors, not only the pastors on this call, the pastors that are part of ACPA, but the pastors of Alachua County. So if you'd like to be a part of that, let me know. And then Carl Anderson has got some announcement to make about a free COVID test, I believe. Correct, Carl? Is he still on the call?
Yes.
Oh,
On Monday, Wednesday, then Friday. Okay, yeah, on Monday, Wednesday, and excuse me, I keep going in and out. I just got, I think you saw in the chat, dear friend of mine that died, and one of our DJs of COVID. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I just knew he was coming out. He was vaccinated, but he was a dialysis patient. And it's just tough right now. So it's just please bear with me. On Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at our church, we're hosting free and accurate COVID testing. And it's open to anybody. You can pre-register by going to PreciseCodingSolutions.com. That word precise is spelled PRECYSE, PreciseCodingSolutions.com. And, but, other than that, we're taking walk-ups. On an average, it's been like 100 people there coming since they've started doing it, but it's worth it. It's free. As you all know, these things cost at least $100 each time done. It's rapid, painless. They don't have to go all the way up to your brain anymore. Just the tip of the inside of your nose, and they prick your finger for further accuracy. They'll even tell you if the vaccination is working for you. But I'll put the website in the chat. Also, as we're going back, also there is tonight we're going to be hosting another forum tonight with Dr. Mike. It's part 2. We did it last Thursday. We had a remarkable turnout of people on social media. It was on Facebook as well. Last week we had Dr. Fred Southwick from UF Health. Tonight we're going to have Dr. Mike. If you have more questions or want to educate your parishioners, I'll certainly send that flyer out. Going to be hosted by a local comedian to try to we're utilizing his influence to get more people out as well. Again, be praying for us. We're trying to do the best we can to get this stuff under control. Lastly, I know a lot of us are going, our next month is back to church. I don't know if Alex, you're going there yet. Are we going to talk about back to church Sunday?
We had planned to, but obviously being with Dr. Mike took a lot of time, but it is back to church Sunday. And we are, anything else you want to add about that real quickly would be fine.
Yeah. Back to church Sunday. I believe it's the
18th.
The 18th of September. It's a website you can go to, backtochurch.com. In other markets, many churches announced they were coming back to church, as a consortium, just to let people know as a whole that we're doing it back, we're rallying together. The fact that coming to church is important, even if it's drive-in, whatever. We're just trying to reverse the trends. And I just thought of the idea of just, us all just kind of trying to do this as a body of churches, just saying, hey, I can imagine all of our churches being back on a flyer together, like back to church Sunday, come visit any one of our churches. And, our website or our time is starting. Just a concerted effort, and just see if we can just come and I think that unity is powerful. And when people see us doing stuff together, it just means a whole lot. I also got a sponsor who's willing to, and it doesn't have to be on this particular day, but a sponsor, whenever you're willing to host a back to church Sunday or something like that, and you want to go dinners for your parishioners and guests, I can get a client to do that, a sponsor to do that for you. All he requests is that, they just fill out the little cards that he has to be a part of his newsletter. It'll be totally free. It's one of the attorneys in town.
Okay.
But thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Carl. So next month we'll be meeting on the 16th, hoping to have Superintendent Carly Simon with us to give us an update on where the school system is and what they're doing to deal with some issues that are near to the hearts of all of us. So we'll be doing that, and we'll be letting you know whether or not. My hope is that, based upon what Dr. Mike said, that we can meet in person. Probably not, like I said, having food, but requiring masks. And so just be aware of that. Also, Mike Rayburn was asking the question about protocols in terms of where we are. Obviously now the county is mandated, you have to be masked if you're going to meet. So I'm assuming that most churches are going to comply with that, but that's only a 7-day notice. Just to tell you where we are, my church went back to mandatory mask about 3 weeks ago now. And so that's where we are. Anybody else want to, care to share in the chat box or just yell out what you're doing if you're doing something different with regard to COVID protocol? I imagine there's still some churches that are not meeting in person, and I understand in some vulnerable communities why that would be the case.
Well, when we started back service, we never stopped wearing masks. Masks have been mandatory, from jump. So we're continuing that. We will continue taking temperatures. We'll continue to have people register. So we're trying to control it as much as possible.
Thank you, Johnny. And yeah, and we were allowing people to come in and sit down and take their mask off, but when they stood up or moved around, they had to put their mask back on. But you guys, some of you know the complication of trying to keep people in masks. So anybody else want to share about what they're doing?
This is Pastor Kevin Thorpe. Can you all hear me?
Hey, Kevin, yes.
Hey, great guys. So we do have a 100% mask requirement. We removed 65% of our seats so that we mandate social distancing. We have become sort of a go-to spot for local funeral homes. So this is no exaggeration. We hosted 3 funerals last Saturday, or last weekend. We had 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. This upcoming week, we have 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and another one the following Sunday. And the one additional thing that we intend to begin to mandate on top of the mask requirement and the social distancing, in a lot of our funerals, there are folks who like to do what we call reflections, where general people from the audience are allowed to speak. We're going to be restricting that. We're going to be asking all families to select the people who are going to speak because it's going to help us in controlling where they speak and which microphones that they use. So yeah, we're taking this sort of to the next level of helping to protect people as much as possible.
Thank you, Pastor Thorpe. Since we gave you the last word, can I ask you to close us in prayer?
Sure, I'd be honored.
Blessings to all of you. If you didn't get on or you got on late and you'd like to reach out to me in a limited capacity, we are going to release the recording so that people can know what we talked about. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here as Pastor Thorpe prays